Farm Week is a production of the Mississippi State University Extension Service.
Today on Farm Week, the new Farm Bill is introduced in the U.S. Senate this week, but when will it pass the House and the Senate remains unknown.
It was a record year for temperatures in the United States last year. The records also show it's part of a trend.
In southern gardening, microgreens. They're easy to grow and fun. Scientists report they're also quite nutritious.
In the markets, cotton futures this week topped 80 cents for the first time since June, while soybean prices are bolstered by indicators of new demand.
In the feature segment, St. Bethany Fresh. This greenhouse tomato operation at Pontotoc is run by a brother and a sister. Their state-of-the-art greenhouse allows them to raise tomatoes without chemical insecticides.
We're just having a lot of fun right now, and I know that sounds cheesy, but this has been so much fun for my family and I, and to reap the benefits of, seeing how people are responding to the product, because that's the most important thing. We may have beautiful plants, we may have a wonderful facility, we may have beautiful tomatoes, but if they don't taste good, it's all for naught.
Good day, everyone. I'm Leighton Spann.
And I'm Artis Ford. Welcome to Farm Week.
Mississippi Senator Thad Cochran is now the ranking Republican on the U.S. Senate Agriculture Committee.
Well, now, Leighton, another prominent Republican on the Senate Ag Committee, says that this change in the committee's Republican leadership shouldn't affect the time it takes to pass a new farm bill. Charles Grassley of Iowa says that work on the new farm bill should not have to start from scratch. Grassley admits that there could be some debate since Cochran brings a Southern perspective now to the Farm Bill. Grassley said, however, to get the Farm Bill out of the Senate Ag Committee in a timely fashion means there can't be a lot of changes. He believes that Senate Ag Committee Chairman Debbie Stabenow of Michigan, a Democrat, will not be in favor of many changes. Grassley says the fact that the House's Ag leadership did not change on their Ag Committee should mean faster action there. Now, Grassley says the main concern is, will the new Farm Bill be brought up on the floors of the House and the Senate? Well, the same day, Tuesday, Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, Democrat, did just that, introducing the Senate-passed version of the Farm Bill as a top priority bill. The House of Representatives, however, has not passed its version of the new Farm Bill. Stabenow says that she is willing to hold a committee markup of the new Farm Bill as soon as possible.
If you think the prices of corn and soybeans were high last year, well, it may happen again. It was confirmed last week that the worst drought in half a century is showing no signs of letting up. The temperature numbers from last year show the U.S. is posting a lot of warm years close together. Market to Market's Mike Pearson reports.
2012 is being remembered as one of the driest and hottest years in U.S. history. The year did set a record for the warmest ever in the continental U.S. with an average temperature of 55.3 degrees, a full degree above the previous all-time high set in 1998.
It also proved to be the driest since 1988 and the 15th driest on record. USDA meteorologist Brad Rippey says 2012 was part of a recent trend in warming temperatures.
Over the last 15 years, from 1998 to 2012, we have seen 7 of the 10 warmest U.S. years on record. In addition to 1998 and 2012, we also achieved top 10 rankings for warmth in 1999, 2001, and 3 in a row, 2005, 6, and 7.
Rippey adds feedback from the drought was a major reason for the last year's high temperatures.
By the time we got into the late spring and the summer, soils were very dry, and a lot of the sun's energy went into heating up the ground and the adjacent air, and not into evaporation like we would see in a typical early summer pattern. So as we moved through the summer, a lot of the sun's energy went into heating rather than evaporation, and that contributed to the hottest month on record in July, and that carried on through the rest of the summer.
While snow covers the ground in much of the Mountain West, a look at Weather Service International's snow cover map reveals a disappearing snow line across much of the Corn Belt. The latest drought monitor from University of Nebraska reveals portions of the South, Southeast, and Midwest did receive some rain this past week. But nationally, the arid conditions are worsening. According to the University of Nebraska, 70% of the nation is in some form of drought, up 20 percentage points from a year ago at this time.
Fortunately, we don't have La Nina right now, and that would be a contributor to even more likelihood of a very warm start to 2013. But I don't think anybody expects to see a complete repeat of what we saw in 2012, pretty much from January to December, warm and dry conditions. But we certainly have a lot of drought still left behind, and we're at great risk for another warm and dry year if things continue as we have.
Well, some vegetable gardeners get bored and restless during the winter months. In this week's Southern Gardening segment, Extension Horticulturist Dr. Gary Bachman shows us how growing microgreens can relieve the symptoms of cabin fever.
Have you been bored, restless, or even irritable because you can't get into your garden this winter? Well, my friend, you have cabin fever. Cabin fever is also called seasonal affective disorder because of the short and cloudy days of winter and can impact many gardeners during the winter months. And for the active gardener, it only gets worse when all those catalogs start arriving. But there is a simple cure until spring arrives. You need to grow an indoor microgreen salad garden. Microgreens are colorful, nutritious, and a delicious way to brighten any winter mood. Arugula, Asian greens bok choy or kinko, or spicy mesclun mix are good, easy-to-grow choices. And look how beautiful these red beets are. Growing microgreens is easy and only requires a small space on a windowsill or under a light. Any size container will do. Bedding plant trays or repurposed plastic clamshells are good growing containers. Sprinkle seeds of your favorite greens on the surface of moistened growing mix. Gently tamp and cover. After a few days, the seeds will be germinating. After 7 days, the greens will be ready to start harvesting. Sowing seeds weekly can ensure a steady supply of microgreens, keeping you cabin fever free. Microgreens are sometimes called vegetable confetti and can be used as a decorative addition to dinner, or when blended together, they can be a colorful salad. So if you're exhibiting any of the symptoms of cabin fever, try growing some of these fresh microgreens indoors. You'll scratch that gardening itch, as well as having some tasty salads. I'm Gary Bachman for Southern Gardening.
Well, Leighton, it appears that microgreens could actually be more nutritious than the mature leaves of the same plants. According to researchers at the U.S. Department of Agriculture, they found that the leaves of almost all microgreens have 4 to 6 times the nutrients than the mature leaves of the same plants, and that there is a variation among them, that red cabbage was the highest in vitamin C, while the green daikon radish microgreens had the most vitamin E. So,
interesting.
There you go. In the feature segment, these tomatoes don't see rain, but that doesn't stop them from growing. St. Bethany's Fresh of Pontotoc uses a state-of-the-art computer-controlled greenhouse. Time now for the markets with Leighton. And you say the shuttered paper mill in Natchez is coming back to life.
That's right, Artist. Mississippi River Pulp was purchased Wednesday of this week by the Vondrell Corporation of North Carolina. They say 100 new jobs are being promised at that mill. It closed back in October 31st. So definitely some good news, encouraging news for the forestry products industry.
Definitely good news.
Also ahead this week in our market segment, U.S. catfish processing is up slightly. Fed cattle takes a hit. And the seed and chemical supply for spring planting is better than predicted. The monthly snapshot of the nation's farm-raised catfish industry was released Tuesday afternoon. In December, producers received a pond bank price of 83 cents per pound. Now, this is 42 cents per pound under what was paid 1 year ago. Farm sales totaled over 22.5 million pounds round weight, a slight uptick from December 2011. Processor sales were over 12.5 million pounds. That's an increase of 12% from 1 year ago. Tuesday afternoon's cold storage report from the USDA put some pressure on the cattle market. Beef stocks were higher than the general trade expected, up 5% from a month ago and up 2% compared to 1 year ago. Now, this comes on top of the January 17th announcement by Cargill that it is idling, shutting down a packing plant in Plainview, Texas. Analyst Elaine Cubb says Cargill's action was a big hit on fed cattle in the U.S. She thinks other meat packers could possibly do the same thing.
And the whole reason for this was that packers have been losing money on their packing margins. They've been losing as much as $60 a head. So they weren't starting out the year very well. Feeders themselves were just starting to get to a situation where if they were hedged, they could have been starting to make some money. But now that this has happened, you know, the fed cattle market has certainly taken a hit. I think it's a lasting hit. Particularly when you look at the threat that other packing plants could follow suit. I don't know that any are going to. I'm not predicting that, and I certainly hope they don't. But it's the threat there. The packers certainly have shown that they are not willing to pay these prices for fed cattle anymore.
Our trivia quiz this week deals with the state's poultry industry. And here's the question. How many foreign countries receive their chicken from the state of Mississippi? Is the answer 25, or 60, or 70, or 75? You'll find out the answer in a few more minutes.
We're going to pause for a short break on Farm Week. Coming up, we'll look at the calendar in the second part of the markets. Leighton Spann reports cotton prices break 80 cents, while he has the outlook on seed and chemical prices in 2013. In the feature segment today, St. Bethany Fresh of Pontotoc, Mississippi. This brother and sister are seeing a great demand for their pesticide-free greenhouse tomatoes.
I've got a lot of choices to make in the coming years, and I really want to make sure that I get it all right. I want to discover who I am, where I belong, what my dreams are. I want to find my hidden talents and see where those skills can take me in the future. I need leadership given today to help me make the right decisions tomorrow, and I have that with Mississippi 4-H.
Before we get back to the markets, let's look at the Farm Week calendar. The Mississippi Peanut Growers Association meeting and trade show takes place at the Lake Terrace Convention Center at Hattiesburg. That's Tuesday afternoon and Wednesday, January 29th and 30th. Peanut specialists from several southern universities will be on hand, as well as more than 30 commercial exhibitors. Wednesday's lunch is free, and $20,000 in door prizes will be given away. The Northeast Mississippi Fruit and Vegetable Producers Association's Educational Conference and Trade Show will be February 14th and 15th. Location is the Lee County Agri-Center's Magnolia Building. That's on Highway 145 at Verona. $20 will pay your conference fee and your association membership. This is a conference filled with great information on growing and selling fruits and vegetables in Northeast Mississippi. Producers already in the business will speak as well. Organic production and agritourism will also be covered. Go to our Farm Week website at farmweek.msucares.com for information on these and other events. Now check out this week's Farm Week Snapshot.
This week, March cotton futures went above 80 cents for the first time in about 7 months. Although exports have been strong, Bloomberg News reports that gains are likely to be limited for cotton as global supplies of the fiber continue to grow. Analyst Don Rose says actions by one country in particular are helping support the world price of cotton.
Well, the cotton market is really one that you have to talk about. It's a Chinese market because, you know, the bottom line is China is artificially supporting cotton. It's really not competing with polyester because of that. And if cotton was just on its own fundamentals, it'd probably be down in the 60-cent range, 60, 65 versus 75. But it looks like China's going to continue the supportive program. And so I would say that cotton right now is 75 cents is probably fair market value. You know, you rally to 80 is probably runs into a lot of resistance, and around 70 pretty good support. So, you know, they're probably going to lose acres in cotton in the U.S. this year because it's just more productive to plant other crops.
The USDA export sales report on Thursday morning shined some light on how foreign sales of U.S. wheat have been going. It seems to be that there's hardly any bullish news in the wheat market, according to a lot of traders. However, Extension Ag economist Brian Williams thinks the long-term fundamentals are good. He gave me some further analysis at midday on Wednesday. Brian, wheat futures seem to struggle a little bit early in the week. Is this a sign of some imminent problems for this market?
They did, but I think it's only short term. The long-term indicators are still strong for wheat with lower than expected production because of the drought and good demand. So I think it's only a short-term fluctuation. So long-term, you feel fairly positive or feel that we'll have a stability in the wheat market? Yeah, the main thing that we need to watch for is the drought. The ongoing drought in the Midwest is kind of the elephant in the room, stretching from Texas all the way up to South Dakota. So that's the one thing we want to watch for long-term. If the drought issue kind of bubble back more to the forefront than it is right now, could we see some kind of weather premium added to the wheat futures price? I think the premium's already in there at this point. The long-term drought indicator shows that there's really no relief, at least through April, in terms of the drought. So I think it's built in there, and there's a lot more room for downside if the drought were to be relieved with some good rain through the Midwest. All right, as we record this segment here on Wednesday, we've got really the soybean market kind of being the top performer as far as grains and oilseeds. What's going on in soybeans this week? There's two things going on with the soybeans. We're seeing some strong economic indicators in the general economy that are helping out the demand for the soybeans. And then there's also some weather conditions going on in southern Brazil and Argentina. They're seeing some dry weather, and there's worries that that could affect the yield there and affect the world supply. DTN reported this week the 2013 outlook for seed and agricultural chemicals is for modest price increases and plenty of supply. However, the report does say the Midwest drought did decrease the supply of certain seed corn varieties and that it also lessened germination in soybeans. Overall, the outlook is better than what some in the industry had predicted only a few months ago. Agricultural chemical prices, by the way, are said to be tracking close to the 2012 price levels. Well, before the feature story, here's the trivia answer for you. And this week, it is B. 60 foreign countries receive their chicken from the state of Mississippi.
In the feature segment today, Farmweek's Amy Taylor reports on a brother and sister from Pontotoc, Mississippi, who are putting a new spin on the term local food. St. Bethany Fresh Farms in Pontotoc is working to fill a niche market for pesticide-free, locally produced tomatoes all year round. Using unconventional methods like counting leaves on plants, the new operation has had great success in its first year. This story first aired on Farm Week last August.
With about 3,000 tomato plants growing in what's called a hydroponic greenhouse, St. Bethany Fresh in North Mississippi is not your typical tomato venue. The farm is a family business run by Stephen Hale and his sister Leah Beth Murphy, which inspired the name for the operation.
St. Bethany came from, it's part of my name and it's part of my sister's name. My sister always called me ST, and her name is Bethany, so they was kind of put together and became the name of our company.
Ground was broken for the greenhouse in the fall of 2011. Seeds were planted in December, and by April of 2012, St. Bethany Fresh was selling tomatoes from a farm stand. Leah Beth Murphy says you'd be hard-pressed to find an operation in the state offering year-round fresh produce, which is what sparked the idea for St. Bethany Fresh.
I think in my family we have an entrepreneurial spirit, and one of those things that come along with that is seeing what is missing in a market. We're selling right now at farmers market. It's farmers market season. We're selling in Oxford and Tupelo, selling out every week so far. We're selling in a few restaurants in Tupelo and a few wholesale markets around in Bruce, Water Valley, Pontotoc, Tupelo.
Additionally, Murphy says one day she'd like to add other kinds of vegetables to the operation. Stephen Hale says the greenhouse is not built from conventional materials growers normally use.
It is a hydroponic greenhouse. It is completely computerized, as in temperature controlled, and our fertilizer is irrigated through the system computer-wise. Now we have to mix the fertilizer and keep everything up. And then we have to actually maintain the plants, but the rest of it is computerized and keeps the building temperatures controlled.
As for the unusual looking wall on the end of the structure, Hale says it's called a wet wall used for temperature control.
The wet wall, it kind of acts like a radiator does. Whenever the temperature gets too hot in here, the computer will tell the wet wall to come on, and water flows from a pipe in the top down through the wet wall, and then we have big fans on the other side of the building that actually suck air from the outside through the wet wall, and it helps cool the temperature down here and keep the humidity down.
In addition, Leah Beth Murphy explains why there's no need for chemical pesticides at St. Bethany Fresh.
We have a insect exclusion room that can kind of provide that for us, where when that wet wall does come on, the computer opens the vent doors and sucks in that air from the fans through that wet wall. We have an insect netting over that south wall, so when the fans pull that air through the vent door, through the wet wall, it's not sucking in any insects, and we don't have to use chemical pesticides.
Another unconventional process in the greenhouse is growing tomatoes in perlite instead of composted pine bark or soil. Perlite is weed-free, has a neutral pH, and serves well as a fertilizer carrier and a drainage component. Stephen Hale says all materials for the greenhouse came from one source.
Everything comes from the company that we started out with. It comes with the whole entire greenhouse, down to our fertilizer, to our packaging of our actual tomatoes that we sell out of, the flats that we sell out of, everything, every detail in there comes all in a package deal.
Needless to say, Hale and his family have been pleased with the product. But even with the convenient aspects of the facility, Leah Beth Murphy says caring for the plants is still a big job.
These plants get out of control quick, and we've learned the hard way at times that they can grow up over our cable, and we don't want to lose any fruit, we don't want to lose any plants, so we have to stay on top of them continually. Breaking leaves, as you see, we leave about 8 to 10 leaves on each plant, and this doesn't take away from the fruit production and the quality, color, taste, most importantly.
Murphy says lots of research was done before starting the operation. She and her family attended workshops on greenhouse tomatoes and are working closely with the Mississippi State University Extension Service. Rick Snyder, MSU Extension Vegetable Specialist, talks about how he found out about St. Bethany Fresh.
I got an email from, I think it was from the 4-H agent here, who had visited the greenhouse. And once I found out there was a producer, I called him up on the phone, and we had a nice chat. And this is a family-run operation, and I told him about the greenhouse tomato short course, and next thing I know, he sent his daughter down, Leah Beth, and she came down to the greenhouse tomato short course in March, and we've been in contact since then.
Since learning about St. Bethany Fresh, Snyder says he admires the family's attention to detail. Additionally, he points out the clever way St. Bethany Fresh pollinates its plants.
This greenhouse is using bumblebees for pollinating the plants. That's another way to pollinate. A lot of growers will use a vibrating pollinator and hand pollinate every other day in the greenhouse. If the greenhouse is big enough, bumblebees can be used, and they do an equally good job, but it takes that labor away from having to hire people or do it yourself.
In addition, Snyder emphasizes that it's important for those interested in any facet of agriculture to get information and advice from the Mississippi State University Extension Service. Leah Beth Murphy says she and her family are happy with the progress of St. Bethany Fresh, and future plans are still ahead.
We have big dreams of even schools and hospitals. I'd love for that bureaucratic red tape to be something, my daughter didn't have to fight to get healthy, freshly grown vegetables or any kind of produce in her, kids' schools. Right now, that's a fight. It's a fight, and it shouldn't be like that.
Additionally, Murphy says customers and families often come to tour the facility and learn more about hydroponics. What she enjoys most are good times with her family and getting positive feedback on St. Bethany products.
We're just having a lot of fun right now, and I know that sounds cheesy, but this has been so much fun for my family and I, and to reap the benefits of, seeing how people are responding to the product, because that's the most important thing. We may have beautiful plants, we may have a wonderful facility, we may have beautiful tomatoes, but if they don't taste good, it's all for naught. So we're really excited about how people are responding to our tomatoes.
With St. Bethany Fresh being the first hydroponic operation in Northeast Mississippi, Leah, Stephen, and their family hope others will follow in the future. From Pontotoc, Mississippi, I'm Amy Taylor reporting.
Of course, you can go to our website and you'll have the information there to get in touch with St. Bethany Fresh, also on YouTube and Facebook. Layton, they're still going. Things are looking good. You can go to their website. They're in restaurants in Memphis. They're in a lot of farmers markets, so you don't have to actually go to Pontotoc and some other stores to get their produce. So check their website out, and you can find out where you can check these out and see whether you like them. Well, we are at the end of Farm Week for this week. On our next show, prescribed burning.
It's that time of year when many consider doing their own without qualified help. We'll tell you how to do it legally and to protect yourself from liability. You'll also benefit from increased wildlife and pine timber growth.
We'll also report from the Mississippi Association of Conservation Districts annual meeting held this week in Jackson. A national award winner from Mississippi was honored.
In Southern Gardening, bumblebees. These industrious workers are a gardener's friend.
For the rest of the Farm Week crew, I'm Artis Ford.
And I'm Layton Spann. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.